Asmadgurubhyo namaha. Namaste, everyone. My name is Sansdhita Anand, and I'm a sophomore in Independence High School in Dallas, Texas. Today, I'll be presenting my paper on Kanyadaan. The content of today's presentation will be discussing the origins, mentions, and intent of Kanyadaan in Vedic literature, providing an attempt to decipher the correct interpretation of this practice, drawing comparison with the Western culture, and studying the applicability of this practice in today's society. So, what exactly is Kanyadaan? For many millennia, there has been a tradition in the Indian subcontinent for the parents of a bride to perform a formal ceremony during a daughter's wedding. This tradition is called Kanyadaan or Kanyadanam, which literally translates to giving away of a daughter. The parents consider it an extremely auspicious event and feel blessed to see their daughter being matched with a suitor who's accepted by the whole family and perform the process as part of a prayer for the continued happiness of the newlywed couple. Now let us examine the Vedic references for Kanyadan. A search of the Vedas does not reveal any mention of the process of Kanyadan specifically. In the chronology of Vedic literature, first we have the Vedas, then the Upanishads, then the Smritis, and finally the Sutras. The process of Kanyadan is found in the Manusmriti and the Grihya Sutras. There are a total of 17 Grihya Sutras that came from the four Vedas. Paraskar Grihya Sutra, which discusses the Hindu rituals related to marriage, Upanayana, agriculture, and the final rites, were derived from the Shukla Yajurveda. The only other place where a direct or an indirect mention of Kanyadan occurs is in the Taittiriya Aranyaka. This Aranyaka has some mantras that are recited by the groom when he accepts the bride and is thankful, and by chanting a set of mantras, he is asking to be absolved of any sin committed by him in taking part of this process. It is also extremely important to note that during Vedic times, the consent of the woman was a necessary condition for a marriage to go through in the first place. So the Kanyadan ceremony is traditionally performed by the bride's father. The father does this by placing the bride's hand onto the groom's. After the groom accepts, a verse from the Kama Sukta is sung. Kamo dhata, kama pratigrihita, kamagum samudramavisha, kame nathva samudramavisha, kame nathva pratigrinhami, esha te kama dakshina, which translates to, who is giving what and to whom? Love is the giver, and love is the receiver. Love has entered into the ocean of being. Through love, I receive you. Oh, love, this is all for you. After the groom's recital of these mantras, the father of the bride makes the groom promise to not fail his daughter in helping her pursue her purushartha jointly with him and requests him to repeat this mantra 3 times. Now that we have looked at the process of Kanyadan, let us take a detailed look at some of the events that lead up to the finale of Kanyadan and Saptapadi. The major ones are as listed. Vanamala, the putting of garlands on each other. Hastamila, the mother of the bride is involved in this ceremony, which is the joining of the hands of the bride and the groom to signify their union. Vrat, which is the sacrifice in fasting by the parents leading up to the end of the wedding. Singing, when songs are sung lamenting losing the daughter to a new life and to new surroundings. Mantras or the Havan, which is where they please the god Agni by invoking mantras by the officiating priest, and it's repeated by both the bride and the groom. The Mangal Sutra, or the necklace, which is tied around the bride's neck by the groom. This practice is believed to have originated around 1,500 years ago. A more popular mantra that is chanted during this step is Mangalyam Tandunanena Mama Jivana Hetuna Kanthe Badhnami Shubhage Tvam Jiva Sharadashatam, which means, this is a sacred thread. This is essential for my long life. I tie this around your neck, O maiden, having many auspicious attributes. May you live happily for 100 years. Next is the Kanyadan, which we've already mentioned how the steps follow in that process. And finally, the Saptabadi. The 7 steps, otherwise known as the Feras, is the final step and one of the most important in the process of a Hindu marriage. The couple takes 7 clockwise steps around Agni, represented by the holy fire, with him acting as a witness and a blesser to the couple. The spirit of the vows and of the whole ceremony place the bride and the groom on equal footing. The groom prays for his wife and promises to love and cherish her. They both promise to uphold the sanctity of the marriage and enter the union as friends and equals, be devoted to each other, and mutually respect one another, and put the interests of the other before one's own. The 7 vows coincide with the 7 steps and also signify a desire and a commitment as a total of 7 lives as companions to each other. The Kanyadaan ceremony also has deep religious symbolisms tied to it. The ceremony assumes the groom to be a representation of Bhagavan Vishnu throughout the process. And the bride is supposed to be considered a reflection of goddess Mahalakshmi. Thus, Hindu parents are supposed to be doing the great deed of bringing Lakshmi and Vishnu together in union. And they pray that this noble act will earn them significant punya karma, possibly enough for them to get the much sought after moksha. Having looked at the process of Kanyadaan, let us now understand the original intent and the common misinterpretation in today's world. The responsibility that a daughter finds a happily married life is placed entirely on the father. Today, as in Vedic times, a woman has the largest say in whom she marries. And even though the father is a symbolic head in these matters, the mother of the bride has an equal say in matters relating to her daughter's wedding. Today, some Hindus are literally interpreting the Grihya Sutras to conclude that the Hindu bride is a gift to the groom. These kinds of interpretations are not in any way, shape, or form accurate. And to show the error in this type of thinking, the concept of gift giving in Hinduism, known as dana, needs to be better understood. Danam in Hinduism has a significant goal very different from that of charity in other cultures. It is not the same as discarding unwanted objects. Dana is viewed as one's prime duty and earns good karma. Dana in Hinduism usually involves something that one holds very precious to their heart. And Hindu thought is rife with teachings of non-attachment and renunciation. And that is what the family displays during the bidai of their daughter, who they're extremely attached to. The Kanyadaan ritual does not perceive the act as any sort of gifting of the bride. It is done with the intention of seeking blessings from the ruling deities. Showing concern for the daughter in taking extra care of their well-being, since they're being considered more vulnerable in sons, and sacrificing all they have for their continued happiness, including going through rituals that have been believed to ensure a happy married life of the daughter, shows love, not male chauvinism, on part of the father. Some Hindu brides today are questioning the process of Kanyadaan because they claim that the ritual that leads to patriarchy defines patrilocal residence and reduces a girl to the status of just a mere gift. Dr. Bharat Gupta calls the attacks on ancient Indian traditions like Kanyadaan an imitative cloning of Euro-American notions of human rights and gender equality based on individualism and atheism and faith in a dubious welfare state. Kanyadaan, or the giving away of a daughter during her wedding by her father, is not in the sense of giving a property. It has more to do with the parents giving their consent, hence blessings to the daughter, and asking the daughter to adopt the new family as her own. The father performs the symbolic but sacred deed of Kanyadaan, which marks the occasion of her adopting her new home, which often was extremely far away from her native or her parents' home. If we consider the legal framework for Kanyadaan in today's society, the Special Marriage Act of 1954 governs the marriages recognized under the Indian law. If a Hindu couple wants to perform their marriage by a civil ceremony, they can do so under the Special Marriage Act. It will be a marriage which will be governed not by the Hindu law, but by the Marriage Act, and the person opting for marriage under this law has to forego the personal Hindu law that would have applied if the wedding happened by Hindu customs. So in Hinduism, a woman is always given an exalted status in the family system. Let us look at some references that support this claim. Far from treating women as objects, women in Hindu traditions are still considered pujaniya or worthy of worship. During the Ashtami and Navami celebrations just before Vijayadashami, many Hindu households still follow the tradition of Kanya Puja, whereby they reach out to 9 young girls and go through the ritual of washing their feet and gifting them with clothes, foods, and other items. Kanyadaan, or the giving away of a daughter during the wedding, is not in the sense of giving up property, and it has more to do with the parents giving their consent or blessings to the daughter. And there's evidence in the Vedas about the equal and sometimes even superior position of women in Hindu society. And here are a few quotations to support this claim. In Atharvana Veda 7.4.7.2, "O woman, you know everything. Please provide us strength of prosperity and wealth." Or in Rig Veda 10.85.26, "Enter your house as the household's mistress. May authority and speech ever be yours." And if you even see the Samskritam word for owner of the house, it is grihni. Whereas if you see the Samskritam word for resident of the man, for resident of the house, in the male term, it is called grahastha. So you would think that for a wife, you would call her grahastha, or the female version of resident of the house. Well, not only in our Hinduism and Sanskritam language do we think that women are equal to men, both being residents of the house. We believe that women are even superior. They're not only the resident, they are the grihni, they are the owner of the house. And similarly, in the language Tamil, you can see the word illal, which basically means the same thing, and it's synonymous to grihni. They both mean owner of the house, so superior even to that of grihastha. So let us now look at the Western world's historical treatment of women. And it is important to discuss this because Indian feminists tend to be influenced by Western attitudes. And Western attitudes are based on a lot of historically poor treatment of women in Western societies. This poor treatment is responsible for fueling the Western woman's suspicion and apprehension about any practice that even remotely has the appearance of inequality and male superiority. Women in Europe in the 18th century and 19th century were considered chattel, or a personal possession. The doctrines of criminal conversion and coverture were a legal principle that made the woman the property of man, and it was applicable in England till 1857. Ireland still had it in their books, their legal books, till 1981. And wives in England till that time could not sign in on any agreement. They couldn't travel on their own without their husband's permission. They could not serve on the jury. And they had no right to the share of the family income, even if they were the sole breadwinner. It all belonged to the husband. And the father in the family is the one who gave the rights of the chattel to the bridegroom. And you can even see the English word wedding itself. The root word of wedding is wed, which means to pledge, because the father would often pledge his daughter off to young men or older men for political, social, or economic favors, or just money in general. And the origin of wearing a veil in many Christian marriages itself was an extremely demeaning type of practice. For fathers and the men of the family would be scared that if their daughter was not conventionally attractive or good enough for the man in terms of their appearance, he may look at the woman's face and run off and call off the marriage, and the father would end up losing all of his money or his favors. So they would wear the veil to cover the woman's face or the bride's face until after the wedding was over, so the husband could not call off the wedding and the father would get their money. And since during those times divorce was taboo as well, they would end up selling their wives or bartering them off at auctions if they got bored or the wife was not useful to them anymore. They were treated as mere property, not even as human beings. So in summary, Kanyadaan is one of the many steps in a Hindu wedding, and along with Saptabadis, constitutes the legal definition of a Hindu wedding in India. There are a lot of religious meanings and symbolisms associated with Kanyadaan, as with most Hindu rituals, and as evidenced by a respectable position for the women of the house. The custom was never intended to treat the bride or the daughter as a possession of the father, let alone any other member of the bride's family. Some modern Hindus that are influenced against Kanyadan due to the simultaneous rejection of the Western custom of giving away of a daughter by her father fail to ignore the Western feminist reason for apprehension of the custom, namely the chattel status given to Western women all throughout their history. Hindu women would be better off to not imitate the Western feminists in throwing away a custom that has all the love, compassion, good wishes, and spiritual satisfaction associated with it. However, in cases where they still insist in misapplying false standards of Western feminism, they could modify the custom of Kanyadan to include the mother or other members of the bride's family in the process as a way to satisfy their feministic meanings. Thank you. Namaste.